prophecy is true. So I'm guessing it's a true story. This story happened when I was about 8 years old. I was just 10 minutes away from the apartment I lived in, walking my bike up the hill leading to the apartments. I got tired from riding uphill, so decided to just walk my bike. By this time, the sun was already going down, so I tried my best to keep up on going up the hill. I all of a sudden see a gray minivan with tinted windows pull up besides me, slowly still driving. The person rolled down the window. It was an old lady. She had on a pink knitted sweater and had curly gray hair. She looked sweet and innocent, but I remembered recent reports in our city of human traffickers. She said, "Hey kiddo, need a ride to your apartment?" "No, thank you, ma'am," I replied. She asked again, "Need a ride?" This time, I screamed a little louder, "No, thank you. We are just on our way to church. We can take you," she said. "No, thank you," I replied once again. I remembered there wasn't even a church by the apartment or that way they were traveling either. Then, once I said that, the woman sped up, turned her car around, and floored it down the hill. I thought it was odd since she said they were going that way anyway. I've always looked back on that day wondering what would have happened if I got into the van. Would they have just taken me the other way, or would they have possibly human trafficked me? That story, when I read it, I thought it was super creepy because honestly it is something that unfortunately we're still dealing with to this day. People taking kids, or honestly any age at this point, and it's just something to be aware about and something to be cautious about whenever you're walking to and from school or to work or just walking back from a friend's house, wherever. It's always important to keep a lookout and to trust your instinct because it's honestly most of the time right. So if you feel or you have a bad feeling about a certain person, just don't even do it. Tell them no. Okay. The next story is called Bedtime Story. Having trouble sleeping, Anna turned around in her bed to see her dad at the door. "Yes, Daddy, I had a bad dream. Would you tell me a story to help me go back to sleep?" "Sure, baby girl, but you have to keep your eyes closed, okay? It's late and I have to work tomorrow, so we both need to get our rest." "Yes, sir. Thanks, Dad." "Of course, sweet girl. Okay, let's see. Once upon a time, there was a beautiful princess." Anna began to imagine the story her father was weaving in her head. Her mind was filled with images of princesses and knights, fairies and wizards, and of course, Prince Charming. Her father's comforting voice slowly faded as she began to drift to sleep. Then suddenly the story paused and she heard her father stand up. "Baby, give me 1 second. I need to run to the restroom real quick, and then I'll continue the story." "Okay, Daddy. Eyes closed now. You need to be trying to sleep, sweet girl." "I know, Daddy, I will." A few minutes passed, and Anna started to hear her father's footstep coming back up the stairs, entering her room, and sitting down at her side again. She kept her eyes closed like her father asked her to, and waited patiently for the story to continue. All right, where were we? The princess was so sad because her prince had suddenly been turned into an ugly frog. The story began again, but Anna wasn't imagining the story her father was telling her anymore. Her mind was focused on something else. An odd feeling. Something didn't seem right. She didn't feel comforted or safe any longer. She adjusted herself in her bed to allow her eyes to open a sliver unnoticed. Anna trembled. Whoever who was telling her story was not her daddy. It was something else. He had a very different voice than her father's, and an axe covered in blood resting in his lap. Okay guys, that was the end of that story. When I read it, I honestly had shivers because it's so creepy, and I cannot imagine how that girl was feeling when she realized that it was not her dad. Okay, the next one is called Something, Not Someone, Verbally Threatened Me. When I was either 4 or 5, I was alone and asleep in my bedroom. I slept on a bunk bed, but my half-brother only lived with us every other weekend, so he wasn't there. I was completely knocked out, and then I started to wake up, but my eyes remained closed. I remember hearing my heartbeat fading, but with every heartbeat, I saw pulsing black and red. I was trying to completely wake up, but after maybe a minute, I took a huge breath and opened my eyes. It was still dark outside, and I was breathing incredibly heavy. I was sleeping on my side and was about to raise my head and look at the closet behind me. As a kid, I hated my closet because the door would not close. It would close just enough to maybe leave a 2-inch dark gap. Remember, I'm in a bunk bed, about 5 feet high. The bed is parallel to the wall and the ladder is on the front side of the bed. My head rests right in front of the ladder. My closet is maybe 6 feet away, but along the same wall. So suddenly I wake up and go to raise my head and turn to look at my closet and make sure it's still as closed as possible. Immediately, as I start to turn my head, a voice from directly behind my head says, "Stop, don't turn around." I started to turn my head a little more. The voice then said, "If you look behind you," and something along the lines of, "will be dead and hanging on your back wall." As a stupid 4 or 5-year-old kid at this point, I'm terrified, but turn my head really fast to face this voice and nothing. I got out of bed to turn my TV and light on and just sat there in terror for the rest of the night. It's been 21 to 22 years, and I can still see it so clearly. Alright guys, that was the end to that spooky story. That one is petrifying. Imagine hearing a voice and turning around and there's nothing there. Which I mean, good, because imagine something was there. Like, he was 4 or 5, he says, so I don't think you'd be able to do much, but that is very, very spooky. The next story is called There's a Reason for My Fear of Attics. I have been afraid of attics my entire life. Those Japanese horror films did not help me get over that fear either. I live with my dad currently. I'm unemployed trying to look for work in this old town that I'm in, just so you know how crappy my life is at the moment. We live in a house that was built in the 1940s or 50s. It has seen its fair share of death in the 60 to 70 years it's been standing. My bedroom is the room that has the attic to the house. Just my luck, I assume. Whenever I walk under the attic, I get a sense that someone or something is watching me. And I know for a fact that my house is haunted because I have that sixth sense, and I have seen a lot of shadows and heard disembodied voices when I'm home alone. But I have one story that sticks out above the rest. I'll try to keep it short and sweet for anyone with ADD like yours truly. So, this story happened in June of this year. I was talking to an old friend of mine about something we wanted to work on together. Right in the middle of our conversation, I heard a loud bang from my attic, and me and my friend and my dog all reacted to it at the same time. I was in the living room and heard it as clear as day, and when my dog started barking, I ended my call with my friend and went to check it out, despite my obvious fear. wished I had not made that decision looking back at it now. I proceeded to open the attic door and climbed up the ladder. I looked up in the attic and realized that a big box had fallen over. I put it back up in its place and decided to turn my flashlight on, hoping that it had just fallen over by itself. I turned my flashlight on at the end of the attic and saw someone crawling very fast towards me. I was so scared that I tripped on the ladder and fell 10 feet onto my shoulder. A little boy got down the ladder and ran out of my house. I called the cops. They never found him. I had someone living in my attic and I didn't even know it. All I know is that I'm horrified and that moment is scarring into my memory. After that moment, I didn't look in the attic anymore. Wow. Okay, so that's the end of that short story. It gives me the chills because it just makes me so uncomfortable thinking that someone could be living in your house without you knowing. That's honestly a huge fear of mine. I don't know, it's just so creepy and has honestly happened so often. When I have researched stories or like read or searched stories to read for you guys, there has been a lot of people catching other people either staying in their attics or basements, closets, just a whole bunch of scary stuff. So I have no idea what I would do in that situation. It's very terrifying. The next story is called Insomnia Saved My Life. I am an insomniac and it mostly sucks, but one summer night, insomnia most certainly saved my life. It was around 3 a.m. I was 18 at the time and home alone. I went to sleep at 12:30, so not only was I pissed, I could not sleep, I was even getting bored. So I thought I would just get up and watch a movie or something, and hoped to feel tired soon enough, or at least to entertain myself a bit, so time would pass faster. When I got out of bed, I heard some noise coming from my bedroom window. It sounded like if something was scraping on the metal frame of my window. I went to pull the blinds in order to see if there was something, but just before I could, I heard a click coming from my window. I knew that click sound. It was a sound my window made when I unlocked it. I felt my heart skip a beat. I could not describe in how much fear I was because at that moment I now knew it was not something but someone at my window. Then, while I was frozen in fear, I heard my window slowly and gently sliding open. I felt a mixed emotion of fear and rage. Someone was breaking into my house, into my room. I had a sword collection on my wall. I took the sharpest one and made the blade pass in between the slides of the blinds where someone would be in order to open my window. I felt that I hit someone with my blade, and I heard the short scream of pain. I took a step back and was going to hit again when I heard footsteps running away towards the street. With my sword still in hand, I pulled the blind up. There was no one there now. I closed my window and blocked it so it would not be open again. With the adrenaline still rushing, I took my phone and called the police while keeping an eye on the window and another on the tip of the sword where I could see blood. Police arrived soon after and nothing else happened. The intruder was never found. Okay guys, so that was the end of that story. Honestly, super scary, and the fact that, good for him that he had not fallen asleep and heard and knew what to do in next story is called I Should Have Listened to My Friend. This took place when I was 12. My dad owned a motorhome and we often went camping. This particular time, my dad and I went camping and I took one of my best friends, Violet. For some background on how this place was set up, it was off a main road. There was a road where on one side there was a large campground where we were staying, and on the other side there was a forest area. In the forest area there was a hiking trail that was about half a mile long, and in the middle of the trail there was a creek and a large concrete tunnel. On the last night we were going to be staying there, I had finally convinced Violet to walk the hiking trail with me, since she refused to go the other times I asked, and my dad wouldn't let me go alone. I wanted to go when it was dark because I thought it would be fun. Violet, on the other hand, did not think it was going to be fun, but I just brushed it off and called her a scaredy cat. My dad didn't want us out when it was too dark, so we waited until dusk. We got some flashlights and we headed out. We entered the forest and I had a headlamp and Violet had a large flashlight. I was walking in front since the trail was only just big enough for one person at a time, and she was very paranoid and wanted me to go first. We walked until we got to the creek and there was a large square-shaped concrete tunnel at the beginning of it. Because I wasn't really afraid of much, I wanted to go inside it. I tried to convince Violet to go with me, but she refused multiple times. "Come on, it's just a tunnel. What's the worst that could happen?" I asked her. But she was really paranoid about the whole thing and was like, "No way. You can go in if you want, but I'm staying out here." I eventually gave up and went in by myself. I was about 5'8" at the time, so when I got inside the tunnel, I had to crouch down quite a bit to avoid hitting my head. There was water on the floor that ran into the creek, but there wasn't enough to get inside my shoes. There was lots of graffiti all over the walls. I shoved my flashlight all over and did my best to read it. At this point, I was about 15 feet down the tunnel from the entrance, and while I was distracted reading all of the stuff on the walls, I didn't pay attention to anything else, but suddenly, Violet began yelling at me. She was yelling stuff like, "Get out of there," and "Hurry, let's go." I knew she was paranoid, but I didn't know she was that scared. So, I was going to go back, but before I did, I took one last look around the tunnel and looked down the far end. There at the end was an about 40-year-old man. He looked homeless. He was very skinny and his skin was almost a gray color. And I looked at him as he was walking slowly towards me. I was absolutely scared shitless. I ran out of the tunnel as fast as I absolutely could. And because my curiosity always gets the best of me, once I got out of the tunnel, I looked back. He was just standing at the entrance looking at me. I wasn't sure how he got there so fast, but he did. When I first saw him, he was at least 20 feet down from where I was, and would have had to have moved 35 feet down as fast as I had moved about 15 feet. And I didn't hear him run because the water would have made a sound if he did, but seeing him there just 5 feet away from me was enough to make me run, and I ran faster than I've ever ran in my life. I was absolutely petrified. I could say with confidence neither me nor Violet slept that night. And to this day, I've never told my dad what happened that day, and Violet asked me never to bring it up again. And I still have no idea how he got there so fast. I really wish I would have listened to my friend, and I will never know for sure. But I believe that man had been living was honestly super, super crazy, and I'm so happy that they're safe. Alrighty, let's see. Okay, this next one is called My Friend's Dad Watched Asleep. So, this was about 4 years ago. I went over to my friend's house for my first sleepover there ever. I was dreading it as I suffer from extreme separation anxiety. So, I was already nervous. It started off normal. My friend and I were basically chatting all night, though at about 11:30 at night, we heard the kitchen door open. We were sleeping in a room connected to the kitchen, so if you were standing in the kitchen, you could see us. So in walks my friend's dad. He stood there to see if we were awake, and like any other 12-year-olds, we pretended we were asleep. Once his dad was sure we were asleep, we saw him open the pantry door and step inside, leaving a small enough gap to look out and watch us. Both me and my friend saw this, and after about 15 minutes of dead silence, I whispered to my friend, asking what his dad was doing. He said he wasn't sure and that he had never done this before. After about 45 minutes of him staying in there, me and my friend started having doubts about what we saw, so I volunteered to go get myself a drink of water, which I would need to walk past the pantry to do. I got up and walked past, and sure enough, he was still standing there. I went back and told my friend that we both just lied there in silence until about 10 minutes later, the pantry door opens and he walks out and goes to bed. Me and my friend were freaked out, but eventually fell asleep from tiredness. We both remember this, and I have slept there since, but he hasn't done that same thing. In fact, the dad is always really nice. This leads me to wonder, since it was so dark, if it was actually his dad at all. Maybe it was an intruder. Oh, okay guys, this story honestly freaks me out so much because I cannot imagine witnessing someone just watching you sleep. That is so scary. I feel like this is one of the many reasons my parents never let me sleep over anywhere, none of my friends' house or anything. I think I was either 19 or 20, which I am right now, but when I had my first sleepover, so I was a lot older than the typical age that friends sleep over and stuff like that, but my parents are always super paranoid, and I mean, I honestly get it now that I'm older. I understand why, and I definitely feel like I'll be the same way when I have my children, but this story is freaky, and I don't know, who knows, was it really the dad or did someone just break in? I feel like it will be 10 times creepier if it was a dad, because that's just weird. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into our last story. Our last story is called My Coworker Was Obsessed with the Measurements of People's Necks. My coworker was obsessed with people's necks. He was so obsessed that he knew the inches and sizes of everyone's necks, that he had them on his phone. He would show me on a daily basis pictures of people on his phone, and the only thing he knew about them were the inches and sizes of their necks. My coworker also carried a measuring tape with him wherever he went. He was always playing around with it. Then, one day, out of boredom, I started Googling the people my friend had on his phone. All of them were either dead or missing. I told my coworker this, and he then wanted to measure my neck, which I allowed out of fun. He started speaking out softly the size of my neck while using the measuring tape. He then started strangling me using the measuring tape, and he became more aggressive as he was shouting out loud the measurements of my neck. Security guards took him to the ground. He has been declared insane. Alright guys, that story is so creepy, and all those people that were missing and dead, I wonder if he was the one who did it, which I feel like that's definitely the case. So that story is really, really creepy and honestly so weird. I don't think I would ever let someone measure my neck. That's very weird. So, okay guys, that was the end of all of the short, scary